So here we are. It's been a long time since we've been on a road trip. We made a proper out of your own postcode, full-blown special car road trip. Today we've taken both of those elements to the next level. We've worked our way all the way up to Scotland, which in my opinion has the best driving roads in the UK. And we've brought down a very special car to stimulate all the senses. So let's do the best we can in immersing you in that very experience. Okay, so, and I still, having had this car for a few days, I still cannot believe the words coming out of my mouth. Welcome to my new Porsche 997 GT3 RS. Here's the important bit, 4 litre. You see, the end of the run for the 997 GT3 RS was originally supposed to be with the 3.8 RS. This car was never actually part of the business plan of Porsche when it came to GT cars. It was always supposed to be 3.8 and crack on with the 991. However, so special was the 3.8 and so celebrated was the Metzger engine that Porsche thought, we can't just see this thing go. We're going to have to do a swan song vehicle, a celebration of the Metzger engine, a celebration of the 997 before it was a fundamental platform change. And that's what this car is. They only made 600 of them, not because they decided to just pluck 600 out of the air. It was literally how many components they had left in the order bank in order to make any more cars. And that's why it's 600, very Germanic. Truth be told, they could have sold 1,600 of these, but it was capped by supply to 600 cars. And the idea of it is less weight, more power. Music to any drivers or petrol heads' ears. They took the 3.8 Metzger engine designed by a wonderful man called Hans Metzger, who sadly has recently departed us and left us with some of the most phenomenal road and race engines that we have ever seen in an automobile. They took that 3.8, brought it out to 4 litre, giving this platform just a snip over 500 horsepower and a chunk more torque. By reducing weight, it just made this car such an effortless driver's car. That's the whole point of it. Now today, the whole point of the first drives is really to share with you the things that you can't Google. What I mean by that is you can find out how much it weighs, just over 1,300 kilograms, its 0 to 60 time, compression ratios, etc. But for me, this car is truly how it makes you feel as a driver. And there's 4 attributes, 4 key attributes to all of this, which is the engine, the clutch, the steering, and importantly, the gear shift on this is phenomenal. We'll touch on that shortly. Let's just go back and start really with the engine, which is the heart and soul, the beating power unit of this car. Now on paper, it doesn't sound like much. Boring it out from 3.8 to 4 litre, upping the power to 500, but it's the torque. That's really where this thing comes into its own. Now, due to the extra torque, the way that this car builds momentum is truly effortless. And you can feel it. You can feel that lack of mass, which is something that is missing in modern day sports and supercars. That combined with one of the sweetest engines ever made is something to celebrate, something to behold. I find myself changing gear for absolutely no reason at all. Such is the sublime nature of this transmission. This car has its own micro crescendos, such is the way that the engine builds. The lightweight flywheel drops off as soon as you depress the clutch, but the weight of this, it's not the kind of gearbox that you can just throw home a gear. There's these distinct notches between each cog that really reaffirms that you have actuated that gear change, and the reward is stratospheric. It's got such a good feeling about it. Now, this is not a car that you can just hop into and drive quickly. It does require some learning. There are nuances of engineering in this car that makes it tick. It has a certain operating window, a speed and a flow that makes it click. You see, something else that Porsche added to this car was rose jointed suspension, which has made it stiffer than the 3.8. There are certain circumstances on the road where this might not quite absorb the surface of the road quite as well as a 3.8. You get it on the right stretch of road and by God, this thing comes alive. Now really, this is a track bias road car. Just because it wears number plates, it shouldn't fool you. It is more than capable of doing a daily drive, but the real trick in this thing is driving it to the track and then giving it, quote, full send. And that's when the physics in this car really comes alive. So going back to this being the generation just before the 991, when they added rear wheel steer and electronically assisted power steering, that's where the fundamental physics of the 911 as we knew it changed, because they moved the engine further forward, not so far back over the rear axle, and together with rear wheel steer it did take a complete step on in the dynamics of the car. However, this thing, going back to the point of it, which is driving engagement, driving purity, once you learn how to drive with the physics of a conventional 911, it was one of the most rewarding experiences. What it loves is weight over the nose under braking. So as you enter a corner, you're trail braking, keeping weight all the way over the nose, and then as you get up to and past the apex, you're able to give it 100% throttle because the engine sits so far over and behind, to a degree, the rear axle. The amount of traction is breathtaking. And then let's talk about the other attribute, which is of course the steering weight. Now all of these things really click together when they work together. Going back just now to me saying that it was sort of greater than the sum of its parts, and that on paper it doesn't look like a massive upgrade, but when you play all of these components together, it is one of the most energetic, frantic, most rewarding driving experiences. Now I'm gonna say and share something, I don't know if it's poignant or important, but the more time that I spend on the road in fast cars, the more that I begin to appreciate the manual car. Doesn't matter what it is, just the manual car. The reason being, there seems to be, you know, only so much of a modern day supercar that you can enjoy these days. Now look, this is a modern day sports car, a modern day supercar for all intents and purposes. But it's this gearbox here. It's the amount of driver-focused engineering in this car which allows it to thrive at appropriate road speeds. It means that you don't have to grab it by the scruff of its neck and send it 10/10ths in order to make it click. You know, manual driver's cars, new, old, whatever it is, they just provide you another layer of engagement which isn't always as accessible in the fast PDK stuff. Now look, once you get on track, PDK is a game changer. It's a different world. And honestly, on the right stretch of road, PDK is great. And honestly, if I was to get caught in a traffic jam in this, I would gladly swap it for a PDK car. But on a stretch of tarmac like this, up in the Scottish Highlands, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. It's just smile-inducingly fantastic. Really, really is. And there's a lot to be said for that in the way that the world is going, the way that the automotive world is going, but also the way that our roads are going. Don't you find it increasingly difficult to enjoy a car on the road right now? I don't know if it's just the places I've found myself, but there's more traffic, there's more cameras, there's just more restrictions, and I don't know, there's something about it. But when I get in a manual, I can enjoy it in many different dynamics. Me interacting with the machine, making it tick. Don't get me wrong, if I can get some speed on, all the better for it, but the important thing is I don't need to. I mean, if any of you have been paying attention to my arm, so while we've been filming this, I'm stirring the box for no reason at all other than to just feel it. And that's ultimately it, just to feel it. And that's what this car is all about. Feelings, stimulation, smiles, engagements. What a thing. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we shall see you next time. Ciao.